The Iroquois Confederacy, America's first participatory democracy. While most think the U.S. Constitution was the first democracy on this land, the Iroquois Confederacy had already laid the groundwork centuries earlier. Don't miss out on the full story of how the Iroquois Confederacy shaped modern democracy. Hit subscribe and stay informed. The Iroquois Confederacy, known collectively as the Six Nations, refers to themselves as the Haudenosaunee, meaning people of the Longhouse. This name is deeply tied to their way of life, where multiple families resided in large, bark-covered longhouses that symbolized unity and collective living. These structures were central to their society, and the concept of the longhouse extended beyond the physical dwellings. It reflected the Iroquois' belief in shared space, collaboration, and community. The Iroquois Confederacy, spanning across Upper New York and southeastern Canada, is widely recognized as one of the oldest participatory democracies in the world, a sophisticated system of governance that valued consensus and mutual respect. Originally composed of 5 nations, the Mohawk, Oneida, Onondaga, Cayuga, and Seneca, the Confederacy was later joined by the Tuscarora, who shared cultural and linguistic similarities with the other nations. Together, these 6 nations formed a political and social union that was governed by the principles outlined in the Great Law of Peace, a foundational constitution that emphasized peace and the resolution of disputes through dialogue. It is believed that this constitution, with its advanced system of governance and democratic ideals, served as an inspiration for the framers of the U.S. Constitution. Benjamin Franklin, who had direct interactions with the Iroquois, was particularly interested in the Confederacy's structure, and elements of their governance were thought to have influenced the development of American democratic principles. The formation of the Confederacy is rooted in the peacemaker story, a foundational narrative that explains how the Iroquois, who had long been at war with one another, eventually united under a shared vision of peace. According to this tradition, the Iroquois were engaged in constant conflict until a figure known as the Peacemaker appeared with a message of unity. The Peacemaker was joined by Hiawatha, a respected Onondaga chief who had suffered great personal loss. Together, they embarked on a journey to each of the 5 nations, promoting a vision of peace and cooperation. The exact date of the formation of the Iroquois Confederacy is uncertain, with some believing it occurred in the late 1100s, while others place it closer to the late 1500s. This ambiguity arises because the story of the Confederacy's creation was passed down orally, without being formally recorded. Hiawatha played a crucial role in spreading the peacemaker's message of peace. Having experienced years of conflict and personal loss, he was deeply motivated by the vision of unity. Together, he and the Peacemaker traveled to each of the 5 nations, using Hiawatha's influence and powerful speaking skills to persuade leaders and communities to abandon warfare in favor of cooperation. Their proposal was groundbreaking at the time. The 5 nations could retain their sovereignty while resolving shared issues through a council, rather than resorting to violence. This vision was formalized in the Great Law of Peace, which established the structure of the Iroquois Confederacy. The Great Law set up a Grand Council composed of chiefs from each of the 5 nations. These chiefs were responsible for making decisions that would affect all the nations within the Confederacy. The Peacemaker's idea extended far beyond simply halting warfare. It provided a framework for a more equitable and organized society. Rather than relying on majority rule, decisions were made by consensus, ensuring that all voices were heard. This system allowed each nation to maintain its own leadership while agreeing to work together on issues of mutual concern. The presentation of the Great Law of Peace marked a significant turning point. It offered the 5 nations a way to unite without losing their individual autonomy. The formation of the Iroquois Confederacy was not about dominance or hierarchy, but rather about ensuring the well-being of all member nations through collective decision-making. The Confederacy's governance system centered on the Grand Council of Chiefs, where representatives from each nation met to discuss matters affecting the entire alliance. The emphasis was on achieving consensus rather than engaging in power struggles. Every decision had to be agreed upon by all, reinforcing the equality of each nation within the Confederacy. This structure ensured that every voice was respected and that decisions were made in the best interests of all, rather than benefiting a select few. To further strengthen the unity among the nations, the peacemaker introduced the concept of clans. The clan system crossed national boundaries, binding people together across different nations through shared ancestry. Each clan was made up of families who traced their lineage through a common female ancestor. This system played a crucial role in ensuring peace within the Confederacy, as clan members were expected to treat each other as family, even if they belonged to different nations. The clan system created bonds of loyalty and mutual respect, which helped to prevent internal conflict. Another significant aspect of Iroquois society, established by the peacemaker, was its matrilineal structure. This meant that family heritage and clan membership were traced through the mother's line. When a couple married, it was the husband who moved into the wife's longhouse, integrating into her family. Children born into the family became part of the mother's clan, reinforcing the central role of women in Iroquois society. This matrilineal system not only shaped family life, but also influenced the political structure of the Confederacy. Members of the same clan were considered close relatives, even if they lived in different nations. As such, they extended hospitality and assistance to one another whenever needed. Marriages between members of the same clan were strictly prohibited, a rule that further reinforced the sense of kinship and prevented conflicts of interest within the clan. This cultural practice helped to ensure that the clan system remained a strong and unifying force across the nations. Life within the Iroquois Confederacy revolved around the longhouse. These large communal dwellings housed multiple families from the same clan, often spanning generations. The longhouse was not just a physical structure, but a symbol of unity and cooperation within the clan. Entire settlements were composed of several longhouses, creating close-knit communities where people worked together for the common good. The open layout of the longhouses reinforced the values of collective living and mutual support, which were key to the Iroquois way of life. Through this system of governance and social organization, the Confederacy ensured peace, stability, and prosperity for its people. In Iroquois society, clan mothers held significant authority and were deeply respected. Typically, they were the eldest women in their clans, chosen for their wisdom, experience, and their ability to maintain harmony within their communities. The position of clan mother was hereditary, but it was not simply passed to the next in line by birth. Instead, the selection was based on the woman's capability to guide the clan's welfare effectively. These women were responsible for overseeing the well-being of their clan members and ensuring peace within both their individual clans and the broader Iroquois Confederacy. One of the most critical responsibilities of the clan mothers was to select the male chiefs, known as Hoyana, a title meaning caretakers of the peace. The chiefs were entrusted with the role of leading their people with a focus on maintaining peace and harmony. The selection of a chief was not a decision taken lightly. It was up to the clan mothers to choose someone who would put the needs of the people first. If a chief failed to live up to these expectations, the clan mother had the authority to remove him and appoint a more suitable candidate. This process ensured that leadership remained focused on the greater good and was held accountable by the community. Each clan also had both women's and men's councils, which provided guidance to the clan mothers on important issues. These councils played a key role in shaping decisions, offering a platform for the perspectives of all clan members to be considered. The clan mothers gathered insights from these councils and used them to advise the chiefs. While the women rarely spoke directly at Grand Council meetings, their influence was still strong, as their opinions were communicated through the chiefs they selected. This system allowed both men and women to have a voice in the governance of the Confederacy. This structure fostered a balanced leadership model where all members of the community, regardless of gender, could participate in the decision-making processes that shaped the Iroquois Confederacy. The collaboration between the clan mothers, councils, and chiefs ensured that decisions were informed by the collective wisdom and interests of the people. The governance of the Iroquois Confederacy was complex, and the power dynamic was maintained through the cooperation of various groups. Within each clan, both men's and women's councils provided crucial advice on a range of issues. These councils served as the backbone of decision-making, making sure the views of clan members were represented. Clan mothers acted as intermediaries, gathering the input of both councils to inform the chiefs in their decisions. This system made sure that leadership was always in touch with the desires and needs of the people, preventing chiefs from becoming disconnected from the community. If a chief neglected the advice of his clan mother, or acted in a way that was not in the best interests of his people, the clan mother could issue warnings. This checks and balances system ensured that no chief could operate without oversight. After 3 warnings, if the chief still failed to adhere to the advice, the clan mother had the power to replace him with a more suitable leader. This procedure maintained a responsive leadership structure, preventing any one individual from holding excessive power or becoming unaccountable. In Iroquois society, the longhouse was not only a practical dwelling but also a powerful symbol of unity, culture, and governance. The peacemaker in Hiawatha used the longhouse as a metaphor for the Iroquois Confederacy itself. Just as the longhouse provided shelter for multiple families living under one roof, the Confederacy united separate nations under a single governing body. Each nation retained its autonomy, but they were all bound together, sharing the same roof of peace and cooperation. The longhouse stood as a reminder of the collective responsibility the nations held to maintain their shared territory and uphold the values of the Confederacy. 3 of the largest tribes within the Iroquois Confederacy held important roles that reflected the structure of the longhouse. The Mohawk, situated furthest to the east, were known as the Keepers of the Eastern Door, tasked with protecting and overseeing the eastern boundary of the Confederacy's territory. To the west, the Seneca, the largest of the nations, held the role of Keepers of the Western Door, safeguarding the western border. Centrally located, the Onondaga were designated as the Keepers of the Council Fire. Their village served as the capital, where the Grand Council meetings took place, and their central location made them the natural choice for this responsibility. In 1628, the Mohawk defeated the Mohican tribe and extended control over the Hudson River Valley, which further strengthened the Confederacy's influence in the region. The Grand Council was a fundamental part of the governance of the Iroquois Confederacy. This council was the forum where representatives from each nation convened to discuss and resolve issues that affected the entire Confederacy. Matters such as peace treaties, trade agreements, and decisions on going to war were deliberated at these meetings. The Grand Council was composed of 50 chiefs, with each nation selecting its representatives. These chiefs were not autonomous. They acted as the voice of their clans and nations, ensuring that all decisions were reached through broad consultation and consensus. Each nation also had its own internal council of chiefs to manage everyday governance. These national councils were responsible for overseeing resource allocation, settlement decisions, and internal trade. When a matter arose that impacted the entire Confederacy, any nation could call for a meeting of the Grand Council, bringing together chiefs from all member nations to discuss the issue. The Grand Council meetings were an opportunity for each nation to present its concerns, and decisions were made only after careful deliberation and agreement among all parties. The role of the chiefs at these Grand Council meetings was to represent the interests of their clans and nations. Chiefs did not act on personal authority, but were expected to speak on behalf of their people. To ensure they fulfilled this duty, the clan mothers attended Grand Council meetings as overseers. Their presence was a safeguard, ensuring that the chiefs remained faithful to their responsibilities and did not deviate from the wishes of their people. The structure of the Grand Council was carefully organized to ensure fairness and representation. The number of chiefs each nation contributed to the council was predetermined by the peacemaker, ensuring that no single nation could dominate the decision-making process. This equitable distribution of leadership reinforced the cooperative nature of the Confederacy. Regardless of size or influence, every nation had an equal voice in shaping the future of the Confederacy. This system of shared governance, combined with the roles of the clan mothers, councils, and chiefs, created a stable political environment that allowed the Iroquois Confederacy to endure for centuries. The Iroquois also employed a highly ritualized system for choosing leaders and making decisions. These ceremonial practices not only strengthened the internal governance of the Confederacy, but also impressed colonial governments. The influence of Iroquois traditions was evident as colonial officials adopted some of these rituals in their diplomatic dealings, enhancing their negotiations with the Iroquois. Through this well-balanced system, the Iroquois Confederacy achieved a governance structure that not only maintained peace among its nations, but also ensured that all voices were heard. The clan mother's authority, the council's input, and the chief's leadership all contributed to a cooperative and resilient system that exemplified the strength of the Iroquois people. The careful balance of power and the commitment to consensus allowed the Confederacy to thrive as a unified body, while still respecting the independence of each nation. This enduring system of governance was a testament to the Iroquois' dedication to peace, equity, and collective responsibility. The distribution of chiefs among the Iroquois nations followed a structured and deliberate plan. The Seneca were represented by 8 chiefs, the Mohawk by 9, the Onondaga by 14, the Cayuga by 10, and the Oneida by 9. This system established a balance of representation within the Grand Council. Additionally, there was a distinction between the nations, with the Seneca and Mohawk considered the elder brothers, and the Oneida and Cayuga referred to as the younger brothers. The Onondaga, meanwhile, were entrusted with the special role of being the keepers of the council fire, a position of considerable significance as they held the central place in decision-making. The decision-making process of the Grand Council followed a clear, step-by-step approach. Initially, the elder brothers, the Mohawk and Seneca, would discuss the issue at hand and reach a consensus among themselves. Once they had come to an agreement, they would pass their conclusions across the sacred fire to the younger brothers, the Oneida and Cayuga. The younger brothers would then deliberate on the matter, discussing it thoroughly until they too arrived at a consensus. Only when both the elder and younger brothers were in agreement would the matter be brought before the Onondaga, the keepers of the council fire, who would provide their judgment. The principle of consensus was at the heart of Iroquois decision-making. All council decisions had to be unanimous, reflecting the Iroquois commitment to harmony and collective agreement. If there was disagreement at any stage of the process, the council would have to begin again, repeating the discussions and negotiations until a consensus could be reached by all parties involved. This process ensured that every voice was heard and that no decision was made without the full agreement of all the nations represented. In 1722, the Tuscarora people, who had been displaced after losing a war with the Europeans, migrated north and sought refuge among the Iroquois. Sharing a common language and culture with the Iroquois, the Tuscarora were welcomed into the Confederacy, which was thereafter known to the English as the Six Nations. Although they became the 6th nation of the Confederacy, they were not granted representation in the Grand Council. Despite this, the Tuscarora were integrated into Iroquois society, contributing to the continued strength and unity of the Confederacy. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to subscribe and become a patron to support future content.